Welcome to the grim, lawless 23rd century, following the fall of U.S. Gov and mass depopulation of major cities at the hands of the multi-trillionaire de-hybridian family. Baptized in radioactive hellfire, a rare mutation makes Turbo a fiercely pumped scrapper, haunted by specters from her past, surviving the post-apocalyptic wasteland one deathmatch pit fight at a time. But when she rescues the stunning trophy girl, the unlikely duo are thrust into a harrowing odyssey, evading marauding berserkers at every turn on their way to the ultimate showdown as they uncover the horrific truth behind the fall of humanity. Jake Jacobs, writer and penciler, and Kurt Bruegel, co-writer and inker, are thrilled to announce the release of the first Turbo teaser, a significant milestone in the indie comic book industry. Jake and Kurt are the first and only duo to create a comic book live on air in a split-screen podcast. The making of Turbo Pit Fighter offers a unique behind-the-scenes look into the world of indie comic creation, from brainstorming sessions to the intricate details of illustration. Kurt and Jake, both experienced art instructors, provide an in-depth exploration of the collaborative process. But that's not all. Recognizing the challenges and triumphs of indie comic creators, Kurt and Jake have another recurring segment of their podcast spotlighting other indie comic creators who share their stories, discuss their creative process, offer insights into audience building, and ponder the future of comics.
All right, what's going down, Jake?
Hey, Kurt. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday.
And welcome, viewers.
Yeah. Now, I've been having a couple of ideas, obviously, on our intro. Last two times, you read the first one as me, and then I read one as me. Do you still have that sheet of paper where there's version 3?
No, I think that was an email, but
Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
no worries.
we
Because
had a snacky.
one of the other things I was thinking is I'm going to use one of these nifty uh, text to speech AIs, and I found one that's got a pretty cool announcer voice. But I'm going to go ahead and read the announcement or the intro, and then we'll pick up from there. Let's see if I can sound less like Gilbert Godfrey.
Oh yeah, right.
Sorry. All right, here we go. Hello to all comic lovers out there. Kurt Bruegel here, and I'm thrilled to be working with Jake Jacobs on our comic, Turbo Pit Fighter. Jake's weaving the story and sketching it out, and I'm co-writing and inking to perfection. What's even more exciting, we're the first comic duo to podcast our collaborative adventure. Tune in and be a part of our journey. Ta-da!
Yeah, and like I said, we should get that robotized so that all we have to do is hit a play button.
Well, what it is that I think, like I said, you rewrote our press release for the Turbo teaser, and the first 4 paragraphs are really solid. So that is about a minute and 30 seconds or so. So what'll happen is we'll probably just not talk for like 2 minutes, or we can talk, but it has to be nonsense, because then over the top of it, I'll have the audio chime in.
Oh, that's right. You could just edit it in at any time.
Yeah. Yep. So it's just we got to figure out the coordination, but there's no big rush. I mean, we're just moseying along, figuring things out. So last week, I just want to bring up, because we're definitely gonna have a short, probably the shortest episode ever. It's gonna be probably less than 30 minutes, because we had some technical difficulties and we're hammering out. So Jake's camera is usually not that way. It's usually like mine, where you're just doing downwards. But we're dealing with some technical issues and we'll get it all back to normal, as normal can be. But the Duke, we need to spend at least 20 minutes talking about the Duke. I am adding some posters into the background on panel 2, page 8, right? Yep, page 8. So you found some background on the Duke.
Oh, yeah. Where is that? Oh, I have that. Uh, I don't know if I have that handy. It might be downstairs, so I might need to go run and get that. You're right about that. Well, let me just tell you what I remember.
Yeah, go for
Um,
it.
so the Duke was going to be like in his prime, the greatest pit fighter, and so he'll win like three bouts in a row that have like this large prize, or maybe more. Like he just keeps winning and winning and winning, and they have these large prizes. And what he will do publicly with he becomes like pretty rich, and we know that the society is controlled by the de-hybridians, who are like multi-trillionaires. They're like the richest people around, and there is a backlash. So he will be using his position, kind of like Muhammad Ali was outspoken at the height of his career. So he will use his position to be outspoken against the de-hybridians. And just the fact that pit fights are held is kind of like an act of defiance. It's like one thing in the remaining society that they don't control. And I don't know exactly what year this will be. This may be like, we might do this like 10 years before the present, or at some point before the current Turbo. But it'll be, he took all of his prize money and he bought a giant Gundam, and he went to attack the de-Huberton headquarters with this giant Gundam, and of course all of his like supporters, entourage, followers. It was a giant rally, and they made a you know a frontal assault on the de-Huberton headquarters, and he killed some a lot of their security forces, and he did penetrate and kill some de-Hubertons. But it and then of course they have superior firepower, they have their own Gundams, and it ended up being like a dogfight, and the Duke dies in a blaze of glory. Like, he'll jump out of the Gundam. They'll just be like this heroic fight scene in this legend of the Duke. But it actually turns out that will be, and this wouldn't be publicly known. This will be something that maybe Elevena will explain to Turbo. But what actually happened was much lesser known. The Gundam was a giant decoy, and the Duke actually got some intel from Elevena on the real location of the de-Hybridans, because the public location was also a decoy. So this was like a decoy going after the decoy. But the Duke did actually infiltrate, going through like a network of underground tunnels, and he found, and it was kind of like more a stealth operation. And he got in and he shot like one of the, like, the patriarch of the de-Hybridans right in the freaking head, and he assassinated him. And then he dies in a blaze of glory, but nobody really knows that story, like, in the tunnels and all that. So that'll be it. But the Duke, would be like martyred and canonized, um, for his heroic stand against the de-Hybridans. And what do you think?
Loving it. Loving it.
Yeah.
Now, when you
So
say Gundam, you're really just talking about mecha suits, like
yeah. Well, a giant.
Sigourney Weaver style and Aliens, where she's just
No, I
You know.
thought I was referring to like those 6-story robots.
Oh, you want it to be like a walking building.
Right. What do you call those? Is there a word for that?
Mecha suits, yeah. I mean, Gundam is fine. I don't think anybody in the comic book world doesn't know what a Gundam is, and if you don't, Google it for crying out loud. But I was just getting just more specifics in how you were thinking about, size. And as you just said, you're
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah, the
six
whole thing
stories
is just
was
a spectacular decoy.
right.
Right.
I love it. I love it. I mean, the sadder part is the death of Duke, but he is. When we first brought him up, like in the early episodes, I had mentioned the technical element of using him to help tell more historical background to the setting of Turbo's world. And obviously, what you just gave is a really good overview of her world before she is really, you know, predominant in it.
Yeah, I mean it'll explain how the Duke died, but it doesn't explain how the Duke became the Duke. I think the origin of the Duke will be the origin of pit fighting itself,
Yeah,
and so that's pretty easily explained. But I just don't know how all this is going to be presented. Like, is this going to be like a flashback scene? Like when Elavina is having like you know a fireside chat with Turbo, and they're cooking weenies outside or something, or because when Turbo meets Elavina, that's when she's going to realize for the first time, like she's not political. She never really opened her eyes. She says right in the beginning, "Don't know much about history," right?
yeah,
Um, so Elavina does, because Elavina is entwined very deeply with the downfall of society, because it was her discoveries inadvertently that caused the bad guys to get such control, and doing enhancements of humans, and being and developing radioactive gas. I mean, all this stuff was used for bad. But the Elavina that we will meet will be in her 40s. She'll be in prison for 20 years, because this is going to be about 20 years after a prequel, which I don't know if we'll ever get to, but it'll be the year 2222 when the de-hybridians take over, and the U.S. government falls as predicted. So that's what I got on the Duke. The other thing I wanted to share, um, I'm going through my house and cleaning up a lot of stuff. I found this. This is a folder, Art to Ink, and I don't know. I never really told you about this, but I have
uh-oh.
this horror story I did, and a bunch of pinups. So at some point I need to show you all this. I guess we'll do that off camera one time. Um, what else did I come up with? Oh, I I have a couple more bucks that I'll be adding to the fund, the artist fund. Yeah, here these are some other things that I want to go over with you, but not live on the making of Turbo. This doesn't have too much to do with Turbo, but um, as people may or may not know from like listening to us in between the cracks of making Turbo, we are also talking a lot about another series called B Movie She Devils, which I think is a really cool concept. And so I have some more stuff for B Movie She Devils, plot wise. And I started going over with you the story for issue number 2, But I also have issue number three in like light planning, just kind of like fleshing out in kind of like some rough way, and a character that I want to introduce called Steel Plate. But yeah, I think something that I did share with you during the week was the idea about Turbo 3, because we have Turbo 2 pretty much plotted out. I have it in the form of these roughs, which go from thumbnails to these rough pages here, and this is just how I work. I think this is a pretty good way to work, but just kind of sketch out the whole action of the book in thumbnails because I'm a visual learner, and then take each page and kind of like break it out to its own page, and just use a scrapbook, for this, a scrap notebook for this. Um, and then when it comes to laying it all out in pencils, you could use a scrap paper first and do a first draft on a separate, paper to get your composition and your figures right and make all your mistakes there, and then start on the good paper like this. Or what I've been doing lately is just doing 2 rounds of pencil, starting with a light blue pencil and then going to a dark pencil. Um, and then it seems like it's working out pretty tight. But
Oh, I agree. Oh, I definitely agree.
but but now it's time to start thinking about Turbo 3, because we still have a chance to lay plenty of Easter eggs in Turbos 1 and 2. So for Turbo 3, I was thinking about, in the long arc of the story, the whole 6 issues, Turbo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's going to be a lot of action with young Turbo, and it doesn't seem like there was as much going on with current Turbo. So I wanted to develop something that current Turbo will do, because as it is, we just have her going to a couple of pit fights and then ending up at this big showdown at the end with the unbeknownst one, where this climactic scene happens. But in the meantime, young Turbo is going to be going to the prison. She's going to be going to the tunnels. She's going to be going to the trees. She's going to fall in love with Polska. Polska's going to die. And we don't have, Turbo doing too much, current Turbo doing too much. So I was thinking about maybe some story elements based upon the sentience. And I was thinking that here's my notes. I don't know if this is gonna make any sense, but this is what this is kind of like what my notes are. And you know what I was thinking? Like, I don't know if you can see this drawing, but this is just like a very crude drawing of kind of like a robot animal, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
I
was
see it.
so I'm gonna be a little bit guilty here of not plagiarism, but homagism. You know how we saw all those great commandees, and commandees in a world where there's all these different anthropomorphic animals, and there's also
Yeah,
these kind of like machine guys, right?
yep.
Remember like Ben Boxer and all those guys with Cyclo hearts. So my thought is, um, the sentience will be the important people that get older and older and older, and they have modern and Elevina's technology, her discoveries, working with like DNA and physiology, discovered how to keep people alive longer. But the bad news is like your body goes away, so that you mostly end up with just organs being kept alive mechanically, and a brain in a jar, but it could also have a heart, it could have other organs. um and because they're like rich and they're kept alive for a long time with like no expense spared, they build these robot containers, that are also their desired avatars. right? So it could be like a humanoid, it could be an animal, it could be a robot, it could just be, some, whatever it's necessary to keep the
Is it
organs going.
cybernetic?
Yeah, right. So I wanted to design these like kind of like chrome animals that maybe combine Ben Boxer with some of those anthropomorphic animal characters. And then like here, if you can see, like I drew kind of like a close up here. Like this is just like the shape of an animal head, but when you open up the front hatch, you see inside the brain with the two eyeballs connected,
Yeah,
and then the
yeah,
heart
it's
is
cool.
attached, and you have pumps, and you have everything keeping it all alive. So it's going
Yeah,
to be really gnarly on the inside of these machines, but on the outside, there'll be like kind of like cool chrome designs, of like robot animals. And, they're basically just the carriers for all the organs, and some of these we can call them the essentials, like the scientists and other rich people, other oligarchs and captains of industry, but they have to have a reason for the de-hybridians to keep them alive in the sentient dome, which will be like a dome of like good air and like healthy surroundings. And it'll I have it like that they're being kept alive in kind of like an adversarial relationship with the dehubertans, but there's a reason why they're all alive, is because they have some knowledge or they have crypto codes that they can unlock and still contribute, either as a payment of fealty, like all right, I'm gonna go into a contract, and I'm gonna be kept alive in the pleasure dome for the next 10 years, and here's something of value in exchange. So it could be crypto codes which unlock radioactive peas, which are kept in a cache in some hidden place, or it could be unlocking valuable, computer code, like programs that do things, or algorithms that do things, like weapons guided systems, or unlocking powerful DNA, things that help enhancements, and so whatever it is, we'll have a couple of different examples of essentials that are being kept alive in the sentient dome, kind of like a prison, but also kind of like a geriatric home. And they are still able to communicate with each other, but they have to do everything in code, otherwise the dehubertans will hear their communications. And they also have to continually pay the dehubertans some kind of vig, some kind of
tribute.
like tribute. Exactly. Right. You got it. And and the key to all of this is Elevena, because she, developed when she was very young, these kind of like secret nutritional algorithms to keep bodies not only healthy but thriving, so that the brain activity, doesn't go downhill, or anything like that. So
So, do you remember a movie called Zardoz with
I don't
Sean
think so.
Connery and his red bikini bandolero?
No, I don't think
You
I
don't
don't think
remember
I.
Zardoz? It had these big floating heads, and it would throw these weapons out to barbarians that were riding horses that had a similar. Dude, one of the. It's. I'm going to throw a whole bunch of stuff up on the screen, but
Yes, throw it up on the
part
screen, and then I'll watch it.
part of part of the story is that Sean Connery as a barbarian ends up um, uh, gaining access to this utopian place. Um, and they're all young and beautiful. This was done in the 70s, so it has the echoes of hippie commune, with organic food growing and so on and so forth. And uh, towards the end of the film, the story, he ends up kind of running around escaping, or trying to escape, or however it's being concluded. Um, and he runs into a mansion that looks abandoned, so he thinks he's going to hide out in it, and it's just nothing but old people in ballroom gowns and tuxedos, and music's playing and food's being served, and they're all dancing and they're all happy and stuff. And I don't want to give away any more because it's a
Okay.
must-see movie, because it echoes a lot of what you were going on about, because once again, not being too specific, but paraphrasing what I can remember, is this, everybody wants to be useful in society. And therefore, when you're useful, you're compensated. And then what you do with that compensation is what you do. But then when you become retired, you're nothing but a pain in the ass, because the younger people want to come in and start doing some different things. So instead of euthanizing these elderly people, it becomes more to give them some kind of home. And it's the parallels are just extraordinary in uh, kind of how we're dealing with society in Turbo, which is nothing new, but at the same time, we're trying to give another perspective to, just how society isn't perfect.
Right. Well, I mean, the formula for science fiction, especially like dystopian stories, is like always to focus in on one problem, that we're seeing in the modern day, and then exaggerate it, so that it becomes like the singular problem of the future. Like, with Road Warrior, you got, the shortage of gas, and then that becomes like the one thing everybody's fighting over. But like, when you think about it, well, why wouldn't they be fighting over medicine? Why wouldn't they be fighting over food? Like
Yeah.
it's just kind of like the MacGuffin, It's like,
Yep.
you just want to like narrow in for the purpose of storytelling. But when we're doing world building, this was the kind of thing that we've come across, because when Turbo starts out, like, okay, we're gonna say, all right, let's have this world where, like, there's depopulation, and then you don't think about it. Well, now we need a reason. How did that happen? And and what was the weapon that was used, and then what was the reason? So we invented this whole backstory, and then the de-hybridians are a commentary on kind of like our billionaire society, that we're flirting with already now, with like Jeff Bezos and people that are so rich, that they're doing social engineering, Mark Zuckerberg, and look at Elon Musk, right? I mean, it's such a commentary, that's like taking off, that these people are really affecting the day-to-day lives of everybody. Well, what happens you know if we kind of like fast forward, and then we imagine that they want to stand up against the government, the government's prosecuting them, and so there'll be a scene in Elevena where they're surrounding the building, which is the headquarters of the de-hybridians, and the building takes flight. It turns out to be a giant rocket ship beneath, and it like
Uh,
demolishes all the law enforcement. And that's when they release all of their drones and gliders that have this noxious gas that's depopulating areas, as a threat to the government not to mess with them anymore. And then where does the building go, right? So is it going so it's going to go to like a foreign ally, like it could be the Saudis, let's say, but they're going to relocate their entire fortress, and they have all this money. So they'll that's the purpose of like the prequel, which is a lot of fun to think about. But for the purposes of Turbo, like, things have already gotten downhill, and the pit fights are an interesting, I guess, cultural phenomena where society just can't help itself from you know seeking entertainment, and seeking like this underground economy where there's a lot of gambling, but also seeking this kind of like idol worship, where these heroic pit fighters are just glamorized, and that's where the legend of the Duke really comes in to like romanticize it because he was so outspoken against the de-hybridians, and he launched this attack, and this legendary attack, that I guess gives hope to everybody in the wasteland, but things, make no mistake, things are pretty bad. Like every man for himself, and there's no laws anymore. The government fell, and and the other irony, I don't know how I got to this, but the other irony is that the de-hybridans' own military force, the RM, turns against them too, and they decide that they have enough mechanical weaponry that they don't even need the army. So as we join young Turbo, the the civil war between the de-hybridans and their RM is kind of coming to a head. And then when we get to current Turbo, when she's age 24, the RM is basically gone. So there's no authority, military or police or anything. There's just like tribal warlords and pit fighters with entourages, and every area you travel to will have a different case by case situation.
A
And then
return
there'll
to
be the big,
basics.
yeah, but the de-hybridans, the de-hybridans have to have some kind of power base, and it can't just be like this rich family. So they do need like a support system, and they get a lot of money and they get a lot of technology from the sentience. And then within this sentience, there's the essentials, which are like the Albert Einsteins that are still being kept alive and being forced to work for the de-hybridans, but they're also secretly working for the resistance at the same time through Elevena, and that's what issue 3 is going to all be about. Oh no, I'm sorry, issue 4. Elevate. We're going to meet Elevena in issue 3, and then Turbo is going to like break off with Polska and have some adventures. But then in issue 4, we come back, and Elevena is going to have her glorious death. Um, and then Turbo is going to realize how the world got this way. It was based on technology that Elevena, corporations and governments all over the world, and Elevena tried to, fight it, and to try to fight it, including her like Amazon warrior team, but she ends up in a prison, but it fails, and they end up imprisoning her and her entourage, but keeping her alive because she has a lot of knowledge and a lot of technological stuff that they have to you know force out of her. And but there's also like a tenuous balance there too, because obviously torture doesn't work. So there's where it's kind of be like Hogan's Heroes, where like they're alive and they're running a resistance in a prison, but at the same time there's like moles and there's double crossers, and that's all going to come out.
Espionage.
Yeah, it's all going to come out in issue 4. Like they're going to have some prison guards that are truly on their side in the resistance, and then they're going to have some prison guards that are just faking it to get information. And and there's cameras everywhere, and there's audio devices everywhere. So they're going to have to do their work in all of this secrecy, but is also you know, um, developing technology. Like when Turbo brings her the gun, and there is going to be chances, to for her to work on that undetected, because some of the guards are on their payroll, right? So that we're going to have a lot of this going on.
All right, well, we're going to break right there because we're 15 minutes away from having Jason Sandberg back. So Jason was with us when he was doing a Indiegogo that became very, very successful. We have released our Turbo Pit Fighter teaser, the first 6 pages. It's 11 by 17 cream colored paper that we just hand print ourselves, and we're sending them out to other indie creators. And then having them come on, and the three of us are going to talk how to make comics, how to get an audience and promote them, and then the future of comics. But this being the return episode of Jason Sandberg, we're going to really get him to share all the success and failures in running a very successful Indiegogo project for an indie comic book. So other than that, Jake, we're going to let these people get back to reading comic books, making them if they do. Do you have anything on the out?
Nope. Let's talk again next Sunday, and hopefully my camera will be back to normal, and you won't have to see this dumb side view. I know people probably can't see anything anyway, but check us out next time, folks.